At 6 o'clock, these are tonight's top stories. The Soam trial, the jury is told how Holly and Jessica died. Prince Charles denies all, but that story just won't go away. Dwayne Chambers is suspended, his failed dope test confirmed.
Tonight, Nick Witchell is at Buckingham Palace as the royal story starts appearing in newspapers not here, but abroad. No more politics for Michael Portillo, why he says he's lost his pizzazz. And Wales and England go head-to-head, but which one is going home early? Tonight on BBC London News, given away by their Prada gear, the gang who stole £2 million. And please don't call my father a coward, the 90-year-old seeking pardon on Poppy Day. Good evening and welcome to the 6 o'clock news.
First tonight, 10-year-old girls don't just drop dead. With those words, the prosecutor at the Soham trial set about trying to convince the jury that Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells were murdered by Ian Huntley. Today, he concentrated on forensic evidence gathered by the police. The jury was told the schoolgirls were probably suffocated. Ian Huntley denies murder and his former girlfriend, Maxine Carr, denies conspiring to pervert the course of justice and 2 charges of assisting an offender. Duncan Kennedy reports from the Old Bailey.
Friends in life, this is the wood where the bodies of Holly and Jessica were found after their deaths. The prosecution say Ian Huntley brought the 2 girls here to a ditch near Lakenheath Air Base after killing them. They were found lying next to each other, both still wearing their necklaces, Holly's with the word love on it. Soon after the discoveries in August last year, police sealed off the whole area. The prosecution said today the most likely cause of death was asphyxia. They say Huntley knew the area well, as his father had lived nearby. And they say chalk and pollen deposits, like those found here, were traced to Huntley's car. The allegations come from Richard Latham on the final day of his opening prosecution speech. Ian Huntley wasn't in the dock today to hear Mr. Latham say to the jury that if you're in a panic and if you've got 2 bodies in your car that you're desperate to get rid of, we suggest there are endless places on the way to Lakenheath that you can dump the bodies. He then said, you will consider just how clever is the place they were left. There was a substantial possibility they would never be found. Later, the subject turned to Huntley and Carr's house in Soam. Richard Latham said Maxine Carr knew the 2 girls had gone inside the house the night they disappeared because Huntley had told her. Carr, who wasn't there at the time, allegedly said one of the girls had a nosebleed and that both girls and Huntley had gone upstairs to the bathroom on the top floor. The prosecution repeated today that Huntley is unlikely to deny that the girls died in the house. Attention then turned to what was also found in the house. Mr. Latham said it had been subject to what he called the ultimate spring clean. He said Holly's fingerprints had been found on a chocolate box and that more than 154 fibres from the Manchester United shirts and other clothes the girls were wearing were cross-matched to Huntley's clothes. Mr. Latham said this could not have been a case of accident or self-defence on the part of Huntley. He said these were 2 fit 10-year-old girls. 10-year-old girls, he said, don't just drop dead. He said they ride bikes, swim, play. You've seen how full of life Holly and Jessica were, he said, until they went into Huntley's house. Maxine Carr's role was also covered today. She had agreed with Huntley to cover up the crime, said Mr. Latham. That follows as night follows day. In court, he said of Carr, her motive for telling lies was to protect Huntley. And he added, standing by your man is not lawful authority or a reasonable excuse. With Huntley and Carr driven away, that brings to an end the prosecution's basic outline of its evidence and of its case. On Monday, the jury will see for themselves where all these alleged events took place. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News at the Old Bailey.
Now, for more on today's events, we can speak to Philippa Thomas, who's at the Old Bailey. Philippa, the bodies then were found within hours of Huntley's arrest, is that right?
That's right, just within hours of the arrest in the early morning of Saturday, 17th August, and it was a complete coincidence. The bodies were discovered by members of the public who were just out walking in a remote area in a ditch off a track a long way from a main road. And the prosecution said that whoever dumped them would not have set off down that track in the dark unless he knew exactly where he was. And as Duncan was saying, Ian Huntley was said to know that area very well.
And as we heard in Duncan's report, the prosecution today turning its attention to Maxine Carr.
That's right. The prosecution trying to prove two different kinds of charge, George. One that she lied, and the other that she lied knowing or believing that Huntley had killed the girls. So we heard fresh evidence, a phone call made by Maxine Carr from Holloway Prison, in which she said Huntley had told her right at the beginning he had invited the girls inside the house, and that one of the girls had had a nosebleed and she'd gone up to the bathroom to deal with it. So the prosecution said she knows there's something going on right by the bath that involves blood. She was aware from the outset that Huntley was much more seriously implicated than she would ever admit to the police.
Philippa, thank you.
The British champion sprinter Dwain Chambers has been suspended from competition after a second test confirmed the presence of the performance-enhancing steroid THG. Chambers denies knowingly taking any banned substance. His case will now go before a disciplinary committee, as Ollie Foster now reports.
It's going well, but here comes Chambers, and Chambers has got it! Chambers' train is away from this field. Obi-Quell gets the silver. Chambers is coming through to take this, and Chambers has got it quite comfortably in second place.
Dwayne Chambers has beaten the fastest men in the world. The European champion and record holder was one of Great Britain's golden hopes for next year's Olympics. But now he faces at least 2 years away from the sport after confirmation that he tested positive for tetrahydrogesterone, or THG, a designer steroid designed to make an athlete stronger and faster.
I believe the results of the B test do not provide any conclusion to this matter whatsoever. There is still a procedure to follow and a full hearing of the evidence to take place. My client adamantly maintains that he does not, nor has he ever, consumed performance-enhancing stimulants.
THG was previously undetectable, but a test has been devised, and Chambers was caught with it in his system 3 months ago. And under the rules of strict liability, he is responsible for whatever substance is found in his body. His legal team is questioning whether THG is a steroid at all, but they're likely to investigate the nature of food supplements supplied by his coach, Remy Korchemny, and nutritionist Victor Conte. Chambers' club colleagues are back in winter training without their star sprinter, with their faith in the integrity of the sport dented again.
It's a tragedy for UK athletics, and it's a tragedy for world sprinting. He's a role model for so many aspiring youngsters these days, and for something like this to happen, it really is, you know, a real hammer blow to the sport.
Chambers has set the pace for British sprinting over the past 4 years. He has so much to lose if found guilty, and others will suffer. The GB relay team will also be stripped of their silver medal that he helped to win in this summer's World Championships. Ollie Foster, BBC News.
Prince Charles has denied it. The Italians are reading about it, and it's on the internet too. But the royal rumours can't be aired here for legal reasons. The allegation involving the Prince of Wales has been described by Clarence House as untrue and ludicrous. Nick Hyam reports.
The Prince of Wales in Oman today, apparently unruffled by reaction to the rumours swirling back home. Last night, his household said allegations involving him were risible. Some experts think they'd have done better to say nothing.
Now, after their statement, the whole country knows that the allegations concern Prince Charles, and the whole country wants to know what's going on, what it was all about. So you've taken the situation, which was a problem, and you've turned it into a crisis.
The former royal servant who originally gagged the media was besieged by journalists.
Our children will be coming home from school in a moment, and we'll be very grateful for your cooperation. Thank you.
The media's interest in the story shows no signs of diminishing, though another former royal servant visiting America was uncharacteristically discreet.
It's nothing to do with me, and this is a private matter for the Prince of Wales.
The story's already spinning out of control. What we can't report is in foreign newspapers like Italy's Corriere della Sera and on some internet sites. In the old days, things were different. In a more deferential age, with just national papers to worry about, news could be more easily controlled.
Because, for instance, they concealed the fact that Winston Churchill had a stroke for 3.5 months. That would be impossible to imagine now. The internet has changed everything. A rumour can be spread in seconds, very widely indeed, hundreds of thousands of people.
And even without the internet, if you piece together what different news media are saying, you can work out what the story's probably about. The public are either curious or confused.
I mean, we're in the dark, yes. You read some things, don't you, but you're not quite sure, you know, what's what.
I noticed today that my business is going up because people want to know, you know, what this is all about.
As for the Prince, he's now caught up in a media game of tease and don't tell, partly of his own making. Nick Hyam, BBC News.
Well, let's speak to our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell. He's outside Buckingham Palace for us tonight. And Nick, as we were hearing, this story is already on the internet. It's appearing in Italian newspapers. Will it inevitably surface here?
The injunction, of course, is still in force, but that injunction only applies to England and Wales. It doesn't apply to Scotland. The story, the allegation, as you say, is appearing beyond these shores. It's been on the internet, of course, for some days, and it's precisely because of the momentum that the allegation was gaining, the currency that it was gaining, that Clarence House felt that it was not appropriate to adopt the normal royal approach to these matters, which is to stick their heads in the sand and hope that these matters will go away. They felt that truth is their best defense. They have nothing to hide. They wanted to get in there and make this very clear statement that the allegation is absolutely false.
Yes, but briefly, Nick, I mean, they are saying that these allegations are risible, but can they still damage the royal family?
I think the problem is that however strenuously, however persuasively they deny this allegation, it is the cumulative effect over the past year of the Burrell trial, the aftermath, the stories about official gifts being sold off, the Burrell book, and now this allegation absolutely denied. But it creates this rather, shall we say, unhealthy impression of how the Prince of Wales's household used to be.
OK, Nick, thanks very much.
Michael Portillo, who was once tipped as a future leader of the Conservative Party, says he's leaving politics. He'll stand down as an MP at the next election. A short while ago, he told the BBC why he's calling time on his political career.
Michael Howard very generously did offer me a position in the Shadow Cabinet. I explained to him that I couldn't take a position because I wasn't going to be in the next Parliament. He did ask me to reconsider that. I thought about it overnight. I felt my original decision to move on, to change my career, was the right one.
Well, let's cross to Westminster and our political correspondent, Laura Trevelyan. Laura, so he was offered a job. Does that suggest he didn't want to work with Michael Howard?
I don't think so, George. I think the simple truth about this is that Michael Portillo has fallen out of love with the House of Commons. He says he no longer enjoys the cut and thrust of it. He's lost the pizzazz and verve that he once had. And I think the fact is he's been pursuing in recent years a very public career outside the House of Commons as a television presenter, most recently swapping places with a single mother in a BBC documentary. I think he wants to do more of that kind of thing, and I think the offers are already flooding in, George.
Laura, pizzazz and verve, you say, so how much of a loss is he going to be?
Well, he's one of the big beasts in the political jungle, so he will leave a big hole in the Conservative Party. He was once talked of as a future leader, but I think the blow is symbolic. He stands for the modernising wing of the party. The fact he won't be there is a blow to those people who want to modernise, but equally, he's a very divisive figure. So I think overall, charismatic, also inconsistent, but he will be very missed.
Laura, thank you. Now, a quick look at some other stories making news tonight.
And 6 American soldiers have died after their Black Hawk helicopter crashed in Iraq, close to Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit. It's not known if the helicopter was attacked or suffered mechanical failure.
Police in Cornwall are investigating a double murder after a husband and wife were found shot dead at the garage they ran near Wadebridge. Post-mortem examinations are being carried out on the bodies of Carol and Graham Fisher.
Health officials are warning of a new strain of flu this winter, which has already killed 4 children. Doctors say vulnerable people must make sure that they're vaccinated. Well, Fergus Walsh is here. And Fergus, how serious does this look for this winter, do you think?
Well, Sian, the flu season's only just begun, but already health officials are warning we can expect an imminent rise in cases. Already this autumn, 3 children have died in Scotland, 2 from the new strain, and 2 children have died in England. Now, it's worth stressing the vast majority of children who get flu will recover fully, and it's the elderly who are most at risk. In recent years, there's been virtually no flu around this early, but this autumn the flu season started earlier and the rise is steeper. So, will there be a flu epidemic? Well, it's simply too early to tell. Currently, there are 36 people in every 100,000 who have the flu. Now, that's a tiny proportion. It's got to reach 400 for an epidemic. Now, the last was in the winter of 1989 when there were 600 cases per 100,000 and 26,000 flu-related deaths. But what about this new strain? Is it especially virulent?
It's not a question of whether it's particularly strong, it's just that as we haven't had flu in recent years and that this flu strain is a little different to previous strains, then a lot of us, particularly the young, may be susceptible to infection with this virus.
So what type of flu is here? Well, there are several, but it's influenza A which is causing most concern. Now, every year new vaccines are made to combat the virus and prevent it invading the body, but the flu virus never rests. Every year it changes a little. So this winter we have the Fujian strain, named after the province in China where it was identified. So will the flu vaccine be any use against it? Well, it will protect against two other strains floating around, and it'll offer partial protection against the Fujian strain. So if you get the flu and you've had the jab, you'll get better quicker. Health officials have renewed appeals for anyone aged 65 and over to have their free flu jab. But it's not just for the elderly. Janice has an impaired immune system, so needs a flu jab every year. Other at-risk groups include adults and children with chronic respiratory, heart and kidney problems. So we simply can't predict how severe this flu season will be, but now that 70% of the elderly get immunised, we're better protected than ever before. Soam.
OK, Fergus, thanks very much. Let's have a look at the time now. It's just after 6:15.
A reminder of tonight's top story. The prosecutor at the Soam trial has told the jury that Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells were probably suffocated.
And later in the programme, one hull of a row. The council the government says is so bad it's sending in its own hit squad. And riding into retirement, Pat Eddery, 11 times champion jockey, prepares to hang up his silks.
Later on BBC London News, daggers out for the derby as the Essex boys gear up for the FA Cup showdown. And
1997. An interstitial time helix.
The dead ringer himself talks to us live.
Could be the work of some time.
Police in Germany are cracking down on extreme right-wing groups, and their efforts have led them to the neo-Nazi Combat 18, an organisation previously only known here in Britain. Combat 18 was formed in 1992 and takes its name from the position of Adolf Hitler's initials in the alphabet, 1 and 8. Membership is thought to be between 40 and 200. For tonight's 6th special report, Tristana Moore reports from Berlin on Germany's far right.
A police raid in northern Germany. Special forces and 300 officers were involved in this operation. The first time they've cracked down on a neo-Nazi group linked to Combat 18 in Britain. The intelligence services have arrested this man, the alleged leader, and 2 other Germans.
It's a very dangerous and violent group. We found weapons, we found Nazi flags and other things, and we are very happy that 3 of the leaders are now in prison.
Forensic officers are now examining all this material, which will be used as evidence in any future trial.
These are just some of the things which the German police found. A Nazi swastika flag, Nazi records, a statue of Adolf Hitler, and they also discovered copies of Hitler's Mein Kampf. The German authorities say that they're confident that they've smashed a major Combat 18 ring.
In all, 50 properties were raided. Police found a list of bomb-making equipment. Combat 18 is the name used by the armed wing of another neo-Nazi network, Blood and Honor, which was banned in Germany several years ago. The group spread their message of hate via the internet and through music. Neumünster is like any other town in northern Germany, but it's here that members of the neo-Nazi gang lived and worked. We went to the tattoo shop where one of the presumed leaders used to work. This was the scene when we arrived, locals spraying us with disinfectant. According to a local campaigner, the group have been active in the area for years.
I know about this group about 5 years, a neo-Nazis group, and they got a pub and they got a fitness, fitness center, and we're very worried about it.
There are around 200 right-wing extremist groups in Germany. Demonstrations like this one are common. The authorities are on high alert. They say the fight Combat 18, a British neo-Nazi group bent on violence, is now operating in Germany, shows a new worrying development. Tristana Moore, BBC News, Kiel, northern Germany.
The fight against the far-right group in Germany.
The government is sending a hit squad to Hull, that's John Prescott's home city, to try to sort out the council there. The Audit Commission found it still hadn't tackled severe problems that it identified more than a year ago. Well, Richard Bilton has spent the day in Hull.
This is the city of abandoned council homes. There are more than 7,000 across Hull. And it's not a new issue. Failure to sort out housing, one of the reasons 16 months ago the council was branded a failure. When that happened last summer, we came here to the Bransholme estate to talk to Joyce Bostock.
It's very disheartening because you get people visiting you and they'll think, oh my God, where have I come? Because they just can't believe that it's been run down like this.
So now, not much more than a year on, another highly critical report. Many of the problems just haven't gone away. So what's it like for people like Joyce, still here on the Bransholme estate?
This as well.
Joyce hasn't lost hope, but thinks that the estate is on its last chance.
Well, there isn't much happened in the last 18 months at all. But
Is that very frustrating?
Yes, very. But in the next 18 months, hopefully, we will see a big change and everybody will be more settled, because people just aren't settled at all now.
There's some anger on the estates that the council backed big city centre projects like the Deep Aquarium, but that could provide inspiration. If the energy required to get buildings like this off the ground and running had been applied to less glamorous areas like housing, then Hull Council wouldn't have the problems that it's got now. Those in charge at City Hall think it can be turned around.
We're asking people to work with us, even if they're distrustful of us.
So why should the people on Bransholme have faith in you this time?
Well, because I mean what I say.
As well as his new government advisers, the people of the Bransholme estate will hold him to his word. Richard Bilton, BBC News, Hull.
Now, with news of all the sport this weekend, here's Hazel.
Hello, Hazel. Thanks, George, and indeed, Shan. Good evening to you. Yes, it seems like we've been discussing this Rugby World Cup for months, but this weekend we have finally reached the business end of the tournament with the quarter-finals. Scotland are up against the hosts and holders Australia tomorrow. Then on Sunday in Brisbane, a rejuvenated Wales will aim to turn up the heat on England.
Genteel Brisbane, a city where life moves slowly and peacefully, or at least it did.
Swing low!
Now England, Wales and Scotland are in town and enjoying their time in the sun. The spotlight directed most on England though, the World Cup favourites preparing to tackle rejuvenated Wales. And in England's ranks, a man who will equal the world record for international caps.
I think we're in for a hard game. I think we know that Wales have played very well. The last game they played against New Zealand, they played great. And an England-Wales game is never lacking in any passion.
On Sunday morning, this is the tunnel that the England and Wales players will be filing along, and this is what will greet them, the 52,000 capacity Suncorp Stadium. Now, at the moment, the England players are preparing for the match. The fans are expecting them to win. What these players are expecting is a tough game. History is on Wales' side, though. They've played England just once in the World Cup, 16 years ago, and Wales won. So I asked one of their modern stars what a repeat victory would mean to the fans.
You know, to most people back home in Wales, it's a thing that puts a spring in their step on a Monday morning. So, you know, if the guys can put in another good performance and pull off a victory on Sunday, then, you know, Wales will be a happier place for the next 7 days.
The locals here are backing Wales too. Australians do love rugby, they're just not very keen on England. Adam Parsons, BBC News, Brisbane.
So why have the Aussies got it in for the English? A little earlier I put that question to a man with 39 caps for the Wallabies, Andrew Slack, who captained their great side of the 1980s.
I think it's just all basically a bit of fun. English should take it as a compliment, because if they weren't any good, everyone will want them to be better. So I think the fact that they're pretty well the favourites for the Cup in many people's eyes means they're decent to have a go at, and I guess it's the old authority figure, and you know, the bigger brother want to knock him off, so I wouldn't get too down in the mouth about our pommy bashing.
Now let's talk about this quarter-final. New Zealand, of course, were given a huge fright by Wales last weekend, so realistically, what kind of chance do you give the Welsh against England?
Limited. I mean, they were fantastic against New Zealand. It was terrific for rugby people to see you know, a great Welsh performance. But I think sides like that who haven't done it consistently week in, week out over the last few years aren't suddenly going to do it week in, week out at this World Cup. And while they'll be more of a danger than perhaps we thought they'd be a week ago, I think England will still do them.
And finally, let's talk about the Scotland match. We're playing you fellas, of course, the Australians. We haven't beaten you since 1982. Is that going to change tomorrow?
Did you bring that up because I was in that team that got beat? Yeah, look, I don't think it is. I think our record's going to stand. The Scots haven't been great, and I just think Australia, yeah, they're moving along okay. I don't know if they're going as pleased, they'd be as pleased as they'd like to be about their progress, but I still think they'll have enough to knock you lot off.
OK, well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one, Andrew. Thanks for joining us from Brisbane tonight. Now, racing legend Pat Eddery is aiming to bow out of the sport tomorrow with yet another win. The 11 times champion jockey, who's ridden over 4,600 winners, will hang up his silks at Doncaster after 36 years in the saddle.
Hours away from retirement, and the ritual is still the same. But Pat Eddery is about to turn his back on a career that's taken him from penniless apprentice to millionaire.
Well, I've been at it a long time, riding horses for 37 years, and I just feel now as good a time as any. I'm 51 years old, can't go forever.
The daily battle with the scales is nearly over.
10.
The 11 times champion jockey remains one of the most well-liked men on the racecourse. After 37 years at the top, he still inspires the best.
He took racing to another dimension, and he's left it at his very peak, so he'd be greatly missed. You know, I learned so much from him, and I'm going to try to take the back and carry on for what he taught me.
And this is what Eddery is famous for, the King George in 1975 and a horse called Grundy.
Grundy wins it, Bastino's second.
It's known as the race of the century.
Oh, Grundy has done it. Grundy.
For Pat Eddery, today is a day just like any other. But for those people who've come here to Doncaster races to watch him, it's the end of an era. At the final furlong, there won't be any fanfare. Eddery will spend tomorrow simply trying to ride winners. Sally Nugent, BBC News, Doncaster.
And finally, in Rugby League, Great Britain take on Australia at Wigan in the opening Ashes Test match this weekend. Highlights of that on Sunday Grandstand. That's your sport for now, guys.
Thank you, Hazel.
Let's get the latest weather now. Michael Fisher's here. It's going to be a chilly one this weekend, isn't it?
It's going to be very different. Today we had another taste of summer. 20 degrees at Loch Carron, 20 degrees at Llanbedr, but it's all changed for tomorrow. The reason, well, if you look very closely, there's some cloud here on the continent. That's been moving relentlessly westwards during the course of the day. That has our name on it, and it's going to be coming in across the country. We start off with clear skies, though, in most places, but later on in the night, cloud feeds into many central and northern parts. Might be still quite well broken by the end of the night, still in the southwestern corner, so we're going to see temperatures dipping down to 4 or 5 degrees, but not a particularly cold night further north. But a very different day tomorrow for many parts of the country, eventually under a blanket of clouds. Still some areas in the west poking through to have some brightness or to have some sunshine, but that cloud thickest, I think, near to the east coast, where it could well give some light patchy rain from time to time, and eventually, even though these western areas may start off with a good deal of sunshine, they'll get increasingly cloudy as the day goes on. Feeling very different too, quite a keen easterly wind, and temperatures way down on the ones that we've had just recently, only 9 or 10 degrees in eastern parts of the country. That's all for now.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nearly 6:30. We'll have the latest on those top stories just before 7.
Yes, do stay with us. Before that, though, time to join the BBC's news teams across the UK. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
I need to get back to that call. There's somebody in the...
John, you can't go back. Just wait for them to call these guys off. I saw it. White body, red nose.
I saw the same thing. Saw the film.
The reality of war from a TV crew too close to Iraq's front line.
It's coming back. It's coming back. Get away from here.
In a line of fire with John Simpson. A Panorama special. Sunday at 9 on BBC One.
Now on BBC One, BBC London News with Emily Maitlis.
Tonight on BBC London News.
Goodbye.
Adios, Kensington and Chelsea. Portillo bows out of politics. The £2 million robbers betrayed by their Prada clothes. Also Also tonight...
Earth, 1997. An interstitial time helix.
We talk live to the dead ringer, John Culshaw.
And I'll have the rest of the day's sports news, including a look at this weekend's FA Cup fixtures, where local rivals Southend and Canvey Island will be looking to settle a couple of old scores.
Hello, good evening. This is BBC London News. I'm better at politics than I am at anything else, Michael Portillo famously said after his 1997 election defeat in the North London seat of Enfield. Now the MP for Kensington and Chelsea will be hoping that's not true as he bows out of politics after nearly 2 decades as an MP. He says he's looking to widen his career in the media. If you like, time out to spend with other people's families. We'll be speaking to him in a moment and getting reaction from his constituency. First, a look at his new career.
He was determined to cling to office, and he did so like a bareback rider on a baying buck.
Michael Portillo has already added television presentation with conviction to his CV. He said he saw it as a new way for politicians to communicate, but now it seems it's to become a full-time job.
I have a sort of feeling that we may get on quite well.
Good, you can reach me right here.
Being a single mum for a week was one of his latest TV projects. But after 13 years as MP for Enfield and the member for Kensington and Chelsea since the 1999 by-election, will his constituents miss him?
I think he's quite charismatic, and I think he's got a lot of appeal.
I think it's a great shame that he's standing down. He's been a very good MP. I think he's a very good politician, a very good Conservative Member of Parliament.
Mixed. There'll be very mixed feelings. No, he's got a face. I don't know. I'm not sure. I wish him luck, whatever he does. Anyway.
So after the next election, it'll be goodbye to politics. But the highs and lows will surely stay with Mr. Portillo.
Who dares, wins. We dare. We will win.
Over of that result, and now going up onto the podium for the declaration here in Enfield Southgate.
20,507.
That was the moment of the 1997 election, of course, that everyone remembers best. Well, I spoke to Mr. Portillo a few moments ago. I asked him how he could continue as an MP for the next year if he had lost his appetite for politics.
I've been a very active constituency member. I love the constituency and I'll go on giving it my full commitment. But in terms of dealing with people's problems or turning up when there's an event in the constituency where they'd like to have the support of the Member of Parliament, there's no doubt that I'll go on doing that with all the enthusiasm that I have over all the years that I've been there.
It's a lovely seat you've got there, quite an enviable position, many would say. Who do you see following in your footsteps?
I see following in my footsteps the person chosen by the Conservative Association in Kensington and Chelsea.
When you famously said in '97, I'm better at politics than I am at anything else, where does that leave you now then?
Well, I think that statement remains true. You know, I have been in the first tier of politics, obviously not at the top, but in the cabinet, in the shadow cabinet, and I haven't been in the first tier of anything else that I've attempted to. So I acknowledge that I'm taking a great risk, but sometimes you should take risks in life, and most people outside politics take risks. They change their career from time to time.
Presumably there is a nice, comfortable job lined up for you, though. And tell me, Newsnight or the Olympic Bid Committee or something, where are you heading?
There's nothing to divulge. There's no nice job lined up. Not many people knew about this decision, so nothing has been lined up at all.
Looking to spend more time with other people's families?
Well, I certainly enjoyed that. You're alluding to making a programme of looking after the children of a single mother up in Wallasey, and that was, I really enjoyed that. And I hope, in a way, that made some contribution to politics, because we're always struggling to find ways of making politics more relevant to people.
Let me take you back to Enfield in '97. What went through your mind at that precise moment when you heard that Stephen Twigg had taken your seat?
The main thing that went through my mind was that I'd better lose with dignity. That was sort of my overwhelming thought. Beyond that, I thought, well, I've lost office, I've lost my position in government, which actually excited me very much. I really did enjoy being in government. The disaster was on such a scale for the Conservative Party that it took my seat away, and in a way I wasn't as upset as you might have thought, because it was going to be a very difficult Parliament with the Conservative Party reduced to such a very small minority.
There's been a lot of bowing out and coming back. Can you honestly say this is the last London seat you will ever hold?
Yes, this is goodbye.
Goodbye from the man himself. Well, let's go live to our political editor, Tim Donovan, who's in the heart of Mr. Portillo's constituency. Tim, what's reaction like there?
Well, clearly less need now for an electoral agent, more need for a theatrical agent, perhaps. The local reaction here? Well, let's talk to Tim Coleridge, who's a deputy chairman of the Conservative Association here. Were you surprised that he's made this decision?
Not enormously surprised. I think whilst Michael has been and continues to be a very hard-working local member of Parliament, he has shown over the last year a particular interest in other activities.
Yes, that's become apparent, hasn't it?
I think so, and I think I can safely say that a lot of our local constituents have enjoyed, in fact, watching Michael on the television, particularly when he was in Liverpool as a single mother. And I think, in fact, he's been quite clever doing it, because...
Not a distraction, though, when, obviously, you know, there's constituency business to attend to.
Michael's never, ever fallen down on his constituency business. He's actually a very assiduous MP and is extremely good with local people and has always made himself very readily available. I think what he has shown, of course, is that a Conservative Member of Parliament can get involved in other activities and can be normal.
Wouldn't it be true to say, though, that when you chose him to be your candidate, when he was elected here, you hoped he'd be the Tory leader? Didn't he lose a little bit of lustre when he never became that leader? You wanted the top man, didn't you?
Well, we did, and we got a top man.
The top man?
We got a top man. Michael became, don't forget, the Shadow Chancellor very shortly after we had him elected here, and he fought the last election with William Hague, and was a very good Shadow Chancellor. So he came back, he kept his word, he worked extremely hard, and got back up to the top of the party again.
OK, Tim Coleridge, thanks very much indeed. The people of Kensington and Chelsea here obviously have at least another 18 months of Michael Portillo, and then who knows?
Tim, thanks very much. There's lots more to come on the programme, including a little taste of a very different Michael Portillo, that's all to come, and the 90-year-old seeking a Poppy Day pardon for a father shot as a coward. They were given away by their designer trainers. Known as the Prada gang, the armed robbers terrorised and stole over £2 million from some of the capital's wealthiest residents. The mob, who dressed in extravagant footwear, would follow their victims home and attack them on their doorstep. Tonight they face jail, as our Home Affairs correspondent Guy Smith reports.
Detectives call them the Prada gang, 5 young criminals who lived the high life, shopping at some of London's most exclusive fashion houses. But interestingly enough, it was that love of famous labels and designer clothes which eventually led to their downfall. Darren Mentor and Leon Peters were the ringleaders, along with 3 sidekicks, all in their 20s, all funding their lifestyles by robbing the rich. Most of the burglaries focused around Hampstead, Kensington and Chelsea. Their victims, some of the capital's wealthiest, including Lord and Lady Alliance, friends of Tony Blair. They threatened to chop off her fingers. Others faced similar trauma.
My wife and I were tied up. One stage, the chap we were left with decided to tell us the best part of the evening would be if he could do us both. So it was an extremely frightening evening, and one I would not care to repeat.
The gang would use stealth, trawling Park Lane and Sloane Square looking for top-of-the-range cars, then following their prey back to their homes, and as the householder opened the front door, pushing their way in, dominating their victims.
We have a young child who witnessed his parents being assaulted. This was over 18 months ago. He's still traumatised, sleeps with a light on as a result of the horrific memories of that evening.
So how did the detectives put their case together? Well, the evidence was mainly circumstantial. The gang would wear balaclavas and gloves, leaving no forensic clues except one. They all wore Prada footwear, something their victims clearly remembered. But the crime squad carried out 4 months of undercover surveillance. This video, after arrest in December last year, showing inside Peters's flat in East London. You can see a wardrobe full of designer clothes. The gang was simply motivated by money, spending it on supporting their lavish lifestyles. But in the end, that's what gave them away. And today, all 5 were convicted and will be sentenced in 10 days' time. Guy Smith, BBC London News, Bond Street.
Well, some news in brief now, and tube commuters could face more disruption after a union raised concerns over asbestos. London Underground want to put in new escalators at Brixton, which might disturb asbestos in the building. ASLEF says it will advise drivers not to go south of Victoria unless they're assured everyone will be safe. And parents have reacted angrily to union plans for strikes amongst teaching support staff on Monday. At least 40 schools across 12 boroughs will be affected. Unison says its members will be involved in what it's calling selective action. They want a London weighting of £4,000. Just days before Remembrance Sunday, a great-grandmother from Harrow is seeking a government pardon for her father, who died 87 years ago. Gertie Harris's father, Harry, became one of 300 British soldiers shot for cowardice by their own peers during the First World War. Wendy Robbins has been to meet her.
Gertie Harris has just turned 90. She was only 3 when her mother received a letter from the War Office telling her her husband had been shot for cowardice by the British Army.
She was so ashamed of the letter when it came and the stigma that it carried, that she never told anyone of the family of what the letter contained until 6 months later, when she went to the post office to draw her pension. Unfortunately, the post office lady said, "I'm awfully sorry, Mrs. Farr, but there's nothing for you or your daughter. Your pensions have been stopped."
And the pension was stopped because he'd been shot as a coward?
Definitely.
Private Harry Farr was 25. He'd fought in the trenches for lengthy periods without leave and was eventually taken to hospital with shell shock. He was so traumatised he spent 5 months there.
The last field card my mother had from my father was written by the nurse. He was too disabled, too shell-shocked to put pen to paper.
When Private Farr came out of hospital and was asked to go over the top yet again, he said he couldn't go on.
Because, well, there were no visible wounds or anything. They wouldn't listen to him, and he was dragged screaming by the sergeant to go over the top. And because obviously I suppose he collapsed, I don't know what happened, but then he was taken to prison and court-martialed.
In a 20-minute hearing, he was sentenced to death for cowardice. According to his daughter, Private Farr showed tremendous courage when he faced the firing squad.
The vicar, he said that my father went forward without a blindfold. He stood there with his eyes wide open, refused a blindfold. And he told the vicar at my mother's church that he was no coward, he was a very brave soldier.
Now, 87 years on, his daughter is fighting to clear his name. She wants the government to pardon him.
I would be so proud if